During the course of Rizal's stay in several European cities, he noted that Filipinos were practically an unknown nation. They were mistaken for Chinese in Spain and Japanese in Paris. Thus, during the Paris Exposition in 1889, Rizal encouraged his fellow expatriates to call themselves Indios Bravos for them to have a sense of national identity. Realizing the need of the Filipinos and the country to be known in Europe, Rizal presented a proposal in writing a novel about the Philippines to the Círculo Hispano-Filipino on January 2, 1884. 1 year after, Pedro Paterno published his novel entitled Ninay, with its subtitle Costumbres Filipinas. Rizal was very happy, considering that his purpose was partly fulfilled. Inasmuch as Paterno's novel delved only on one particular aspect of Filipino culture, Rizal became very determined to write his own novel about the Philippines. One of the ideas that provided the motivation to write a novel about the Philippines was Luna's Espolarium. For Rizal, Luna's canvas conveyed the plight of the vanquished and the pathetic suffering of the human race. This made Rizal write a novel depicting the country to be redeemed from bondage and repression. The Noli Tangere can, therefore, be considered as Rizal's Espolarium. Another source of idea for writing a novel about the Philippines was the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. This novel portrayed the brutalities committed by American slave owners against their Negro slaves. Just like Luna's Espolarium, this novel provided Rizal the springboard to write a novel portraying vividly the miseries of the Filipinos under the oppressive rule of the Spanish tyrants. A third source of idea for a novel Rizal was then conceptualizing was the anti-clerical novel entitled The Wandering Jew. This novel made a great impression on Rizal. The literary form of The Wandering Jew could have probably been used by Rizal as his model to arouse the feeling against the existing Philippine situation and at the same time communicate to the Filipinos the idea he wanted to embrace. Rizal started writing the Noli Tangere in 1884 while he was studying in Europe. He completed one half of the novel in Madrid. 1/4 of the novel was written when he was at Paris, while the remaining 1/4 was completed in Berlin, Germany on February 21, 1887. The novel came off the press on March 21, 1877, with the financial assistance of Maximo Viola. At the outset, the novel was untitled. Later on, he decided to call his first literary masterpiece Noli Tangere. The title can be translated into English as Touch Me Not. Notable among his purposes for writing this novel were the following. First, to picture the past and the realities in the Philippines. Second, to reply to insults heaped on the Filipinos and their country. Third, to unmask the hypocrisy that have impoverished and brutalized the Filipino people. And the last one, to stir the patriotism of the Filipino people.
The characters in the Noli Tangere. Although the novel is a work of fiction, the novel can be considered as true story of the Philippines during the last decades of Spanish rule. The characters used by Rizal in the Noli were persons who actually existed during those times. Through the characters in the Noli, Rizal depicted the different pictures of Filipino society during his time. First, Juan Crisostomo Ibarra. As the main character in the novel, Ibarra represented the affluent and liberal European-educated Filipino. Civic-minded, liberty-minded, and patriotic, he desired the education of the people. Elias. Rizal represented the Filipino masses in the novel through Elias. As a symbol of the common people, Elias did everything to vindicate them from the injustices suffered from the Spaniards. Just like Ibarra, he is a mouthpiece of Rizal's contradictory thoughts and purposes. Maria Clara. As the object of Ibarra's love and affection, Rizal represented Filipino womanhood trained in a convent and immersed in education, basically religious in orientation. She symbolizes the Filipino womanhood in their fidelity, kindness, and modesty. Don Rafael Ibarra. In the novel, Don Rafael was Crisostomo's father. Rizal used Don Rafael in the Noli to symbolize an affluent landlord with a social conscience. Sisa. Sisa was the mother of Basilio and Crispin in the Noli. She symbolized a lot of things in Filipino society during Rizal's time. In the novel, she lost her mental balance upon learning what happened to Basilio and Crispin, her two sons. Through her, Rizal was able to illustrate lack of concern in facing and resolving problems confronting Filipino society. She was also used by Rizal in the Noli to illustrate the typical characteristics of Filipino mothers, fully cognizant of the attributes of their sons and daughters, and willing to defend them from all forms of injustice or accusations. Capitan Tiago. To the people of San Diego, he was Don Anastasio de los Santos. Just like Don Rafael Ibarra, he was a rich landlord. His wealth was derived from his involvement in the illegal opium trade. Moreover, Rizal employed Capitan Tiago in the novel to represent the subservient Filipino to the authorities to protect his personal and business interests. Doña Victorina. As a social climber, she married Don Tiburcio de Espadaña to support her claim of being a Spaniard. Thus, Rizal used her in the novel to symbolize colonial mentality among some Filipinos during his time. Patrocinio. As the mistress of the alferez, she was noted to be imprudent, vulgar, cruel, and quarrelsome. As such, she symbolized the mentality of the Guardia Civil. Piloso Potasio. He represented Rizal's epitome of a philosopher. He was perceived to be a sage by the educated and a weird or lunatic by those who did not know him. The schoolmaster of San Diego. He symbolized intellectual dissatisfaction in Filipino society during Rizal's time. The Filipino society as pictured in the Noli. The novel uncompromisingly exposes Spaniards in the Philippines. The government was administered by self-seekers motivated by the desire to enrich themselves, at the expense of the people. Honest and sincere officials were quite few. Corruption became so rampant as a consequence. Banditry became a way of life for many due to the corruption and brutality of the Guardia Civil. The friars, on the other hand, used the Catholic Church to amass wealth and to perpetuate themselves into power. Instead of teaching Filipinos through Catholicism, they controlled the government and opposed all progress. To balance Rizal's portrait of Filipino society, the virtues and good qualities of the Filipino people were highlighted in the novel. Notable among the virtues and values emphasized by Rizal in the Noli were the following: the modesty and devotion of the Filipino woman, the open-handed hospitality of the Filipino family, the devotion of the parents to their children and children to their parents, and the deep sense of gratitude of the Filipino peasants.
Noli as a charter of Filipino nationalism. The novel can be considered a charter of Filipino nationalism. It calls on the Filipino to regain his self-confidence, appreciate his self-worth, return to the heritage of his ancestors, assert himself as a co-equal of the Spaniards, yet likewise insists on the need for education, dedication to the country, assimilating the aspects of Western cultures that could enhance native traditions. More so, the novel does not only expose the social maladies in the Philippines during Rizal's time, it outlines the reforms needed in the Filipino society then. These reforms include the following: radical reforms in the armed forces, clergy, and administration of justice, more respect for human dignity, greater security for the individual, less strength in the constabulary, and less privileges for organizations prone to abuses and corruption. Rizal, through Elias, mounted a solution to bring about the needed reforms. For Elias, revolution was the key when he said, "It is never a crime to fight for one's country." Ibarra, on the other hand, believed otherwise. Noli represented a problem, the need for change in the country under Spanish tutelage. On the contrary, it did not offer any solution to address the same. Nonetheless, the novel was a major turning point in Rizal's life. Rizal had become a prisoner of Noli logic. Moreover, through this novel, Rizal has opted to choose his enemy, the friars in the Philippines.
Attacks and defenses of the Noli me Tangere. The attacks on Rizal's Noli me Tangere were not only confined in the Philippines but were also staged in Madrid. There, Senator Fernando Vida, Deputy Luis M. Di Pando, and Prime Minister Procedes Mateo Sagasta were among those who unjustly lambasted and criticized Rizal and his Noli in the two chambers of the Spanish Cortes in 1888 and 1889. In the Philippines, Father Salvatore Font, who issued the official censure of the Noli, tried to prevent the circulation of the novel by publishing a few copies of his report. His report consisted of 4 parts, as follows: attacks on the religion of the state, attacks on the government employees and the courts, attacks on the civil guards, and attacks on the territorial integrity of the Spanish kingdom. A direct attack on Noli was launched by Father Jose Rodriguez by issuing a series of pamphlets under the title Cuestiones de Sumo in response to Father Font's critics of Noli. Rizal wrote a satirical essay entitled Por Telepono. While Rizal's Noli was attacked severally by the establishment, particularly the friars, there were those who tried to prove the merits of the novel and counter the arguments of its attackers. One of those who defended Noli was Father Francisco Sanchez, Rizal teacher in rhetoric at Ateneo. After reading the pamphlet written by Father Rodriguez, he told Rizal that it was the pamphlet written with the feet and not the Noli me Tangere. The greatest defense of the Noli came from a Filipino priest. This priest was Father Vicente Garcia, the translator in famous Imitation of Christ, Marcelo H. del Pilar. In answer to Father Rodriguez's pamphlet entitled Kaingat Kayo, Del Pilar wrote the pamphlet entitled Kaigat Kayo. Rizal's Noli was also defended by his friend Ferdinand Blumentritt in 1889. Blumentritt's defense stressed his Catholic orientation. Apparently, the attacks on Rizal and his novel clearly showed the power and influence of priors who considered their interests of prime importance than that of the interests of the state.